Hello, hello. Thanks for joining me once again, diving into the wacky world of Azure Synapse Analytics. Keep getting told off. Synapse. Synapse? So today we are looking at something I am super excited about. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I am far too into the Delta file format. It is a big thing if you're using Spark a lot. Databricks are pushing it a lot. Delta is a very good file format for doing governance and auditing and time travel and all sorts of awesome things in a lake. Now, from the very beginning when Synapse Serverless SQL pools came out, I was like, yeah, I want to be able to query Delta. And actually, in a lot of my early videos, I'm like, yeah, of course it can query Delta. It can't yet? Okay, well, it will be L2 by the time it's GA. It can't yet? Well, it will be L2 soon, right? Right? Well, the good news is it now can, much later than I was hoping, but still, you can now go and query a Delta table using Synapse SQL Serverless. Synapse SQL Serverless, sure, which is really super useful. Now, word of warning, it is in preview, it's not fully featured yet, there's certain things that don't work. Do not expect it to be absolutely full functionality yet. It is still a preview service to show how Delta interaction currently works. But we can go and have a look, we can go and dig into various bits of Delta and see how it goes. As always, if you are new around here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video if you like it, obviously, and let us know down in the comments what you think. Are you using this? Do you see Serverless as the good serving layer on top of your Delta? So whether you're using Databricks or using Synapse Spark pools, whatever you're making your Delta tables with, how do you get that to end users? How do you allow people to query it? Is Serverless going to be the answer? It'd be really good to know. Let us know down below. Go have a look at it. So as always, there is a starting page with a nice big, yes, this is in preview. Please do not treat this as a production service. Do not grumble if there's things that don't necessarily work because it's in preview. So caveats, warnings, we're all good. We've been warned. So have a look through, go and see what you think. A few gotchas that they mention in here. A few things that are good to know, things like looking at schema inference. And schema inference and Delta don't go hand in hand because it's like, well, what do you mean? It's got the schema. The transaction log says, this is my schema. But what you got to remember is we're actually taking something from a Spark schema and transferring it to a SQL schema, which means if we've got things like a string that gets changed to a varchar, but how big a varchar? Is it 1,000? Is it 50? And that really does affect the speed and performance of your queries. So it's going to make some assumptions and you can tweak and tailor that. So there's a few things to get involved in. Collation is automatically set, so you need to be a little bit careful about that. There's a few things like folder syncing doesn't work yet. And there's some other things to worry about. We'll have a look at how it works, but I'll ping that link down below so you guys can go and have a look and see what you think. Get involved. Have a little play. So, what have we got? So I've got my normal lake. So I've got my lake that's full of lots of little demo things we can have a play with. So I've got some NYC taxi, of course, a lot of data. This one's interesting because this has been optimized. So I've got the data once it was optimized. So you can see 270 meg, kind of it's pushed together, some chunky Parquet files. And then the data before it was optimized, then it was 11 meg ones. Now Delta, it's got the transaction log. So in the trans log, it says, ignore all those tiny files. They're the old version of the table. The new ones, just look at my nice bigger chunkier files. So go work with them. So we need to make sure that when we're querying this via serverless, it doesn't query everything. It should just be looking at the current state of things. And that's very important when things are trying to read Delta. So we've got that as a little bit of a test. I've got just a general unoptimized version before I did the optimize, just loads and loads of really small files, see how that goes. And I've got one down the bottom, which is I've partitioned it a little bit more sensibly. So we can actually just pick out one of these partitions and go, just those files, please, just that data, and really limit it down. So a few different things, a few different examples. I've set some challenges so we can go and have a play and see how it works. Let's have a query. So if you're new to Synapse, this is all done through the SQL querying engine. So let's go and have a look. So I've got data down here, so I can go and have a look and have a little bit of an explore of my lake. So in this case, we've got, so I'm on that DB lake. That's the same lake. I've already associated that with Synapse. So you can click on there, go and have a look. And we'll see, there we go. This is that same folder I was looking through. Now, so that NYC taxi folder, that's the root folder for my Delta table. And you can tell that if we go into that folder, we can see that's where my Delta log is. So _Delta _log, that transaction folder, which has JSON files to describe what's happened, pre-optimize, post-optimize. We can see that is like basically how you know this whole thing, all the data contained in any subfolders is part of a Delta table. So realistically, I'd love it if I could just go, yes, NYC taxi, please, make me a select, and I can't. It's not plugged in to the Data Lake Explorer yet. And I don't know if they're going to, because they'd have to read the contents of all folders to work out whether or not is a Delta or isn't a Delta. I get that it's a little bit annoying to do. So we can kind of skip that part. So if we go to an actual file, if we go to something that is Parquet, we get that select top 100, the quickest shortcut to, I just want to query some data. Let me query some data. And that gives us this absolute basic boilerplate open row set from Parquet, and it builds out the thing that we need to do. So we can actually go and then tweak this and go, well, actually, I want that root folder. So get rid of all of that stuff. So it just points at that root base NYC taxi. That is our root folder for Delta. And we can say, make it Delta table, please. And we can hit run, finally, and it works, eventually. So that's going to go off, query my Delta table, read a load of data. I'm just doing a top 100 arbitrary, go find me some record, prove that you're working. And you can see how much. So it went and scanned 439 meg of data. That's quite a lot of data. It went and ran, it went and did a lot of things. So that's obviously reading some of my Parquet files. Whereas if I want to do things like a count star, we'd say, well, actually, I'm hoping this should be tiny, right? Because the transaction log in a Delta table has the count of records that went into each file. So to work out the total number of records in a Delta table, it's read a couple of really small bits of JSON and add up the numbers from each file. It's not touching any of the actual Parquet. So for that kind of thing, we should see super, super quick, came back really, really quickly, and it read a meg. Good. Now, why am I caring? Why am I bothering about looking, ooh, how many meg did you read? Because that is how serverless SQL is built. So when we're using the serverless engine, yeah, it's coming up nice and quick, it's nice and snappy. I don't have to have a cluster turned on. I'm not having to spin something up that I'm paying for that I then run my clusters on. Unlike dedicated SQL pools, unlike a Spark cluster, this is just a nice instant go and do something, but it does charge me based on how much data I read. So if every time I said, well, how many records are in that table, it was going and reading the actual data and then counting the rows it got back, that's really inefficient, and that's going to cost me more money than it should. So all the things that we can do to test is just doing what it should do. It's all about, are we actually reading the data that we need to read? So lots of things I'm doing and trying to just, are you doing that right? And so far, that looks good. So ability to write basic select statements using the open row set format with a format of Delta over a Delta folder. Awesome, works. I can go and have a look. I can play around with some different things. So I can say, let's do a count distinct. Now we don't have distinct in the transaction log. This is going to have to go and read the data. And I've got like trip distance. We can go and read that. So that's going off, reading a certain column, pulling back all unique instances of it, which Parquet is pretty good at doing, and returning my thing. So it found 9,518 different trip distances all through there, and about 131 meg. And that's quite nice, because that's not my full set. Remember when I did my select top 100, it read 436 meg, so it's doing far less. It's just isolating the column I'm asking it to read, which is quite nice. I can't even remember what other things are in here. Let's just do a quick select star. Ooh, so select star, not limiting it. We do have this result settings per query first 5,000 rows. That might actually take a while. That might try and bring back lots and lots of data. So I might cancel that, put go back to our top 100 just so we can see the schema. It's slightly annoying in that I don't have again, we're working with Delta and we're in a Spark engine. We'd get the data frame definition so we can be going back and forwards in it. We don't have the describe the schema that you're going to go and read. Okay, so what have we got? Let's do something I've not done, rate code. So if we do count distinct of rate code, just to make sure it's not a cachy thing, we can then go see what that looks like. So go off, find all distinct values for that particular thing across quite a few different records, and we'll see how long that takes to actually come back. So all the experimenting I've been doing, there you go, 263, it's not bad. Again, ran 183, so it's read a different amount of data, it's isolating the column store segments of the Parquet files that it's reading, which is great. That's really efficient. That's nice. We like it. And it's not had to bring much data back once it's done it. So generally, using this format, all my experiments with this open row set, just writing some queries directly on it, good. works, we can query Delta using serverless SQL pools. Awesome. So yes, that's the first thing I was doing, that kind of direct Delta query. And then had a little play and said, well, what if we do it as a CTE? So we're wrapping it, we're kind of calling it as a data, so we can do that same kind of thing of going, just abstract away from it. Is that still going to go and hit the thing it should do? So in that case, again, we're just doing count star. That should be bringing back our, how many we got? 84 million records in 4 seconds. That's all right, pretty good. And very importantly, it's just reading 1 meg. It's just reading the transaction log. So we can use that little barometer of going, are you being efficient? Are you just reading the trans log? You are, great, awesome. So having to play with CTEs works exactly the same as the open row sets. I've not had a tinker with forcing the specific schema in there, just because it seems to be all right when doing direct queries. Now the issue I had is playing around with views. So I've got this idea, I've got my kind of databases in here. So look at my workspace. I've got various different, lots of Spark databases, and I've got my SQL temp database. So I was creating this view. So I created create a alter view, taxis from, and just a wrapper around my open row set. So it's doing the exact same thing. I'm saving that as a view because now I've at least then got a record of what the schema is, how it works. You can see what it inferred for the schema. Everything's an 8,000. But I at least have that I can go and play with. So I ran that and created a view for me. And what I found is that kind of select star from my view rather than using the open row set, that was taking quite some time. I mean, I'm not talking crazy. It was taking like 35 seconds, 40 seconds, which seems kind of like actually having the abstraction layer of having the view in the way of actually the open row set seems to be then forcing it to actually have to think about things differently. So it looks like there's a couple of gotchas still in the previous session around how it actually gets the data. 25 seconds, there we go, that's faster, but it's still only read a mega data. So still going to the transaction log. It's still going to the kind of the JSON files and reading them, but just seems to take a little while to go and actually do that. So some gotchas, I've not dug too deep into it yet, but one or two things that are a little bit, if we're wrapping things into view, saving it inside our this kind of metastore SQL databases. The other thing to note is one of the limitations that we currently have. So it's been the really good experience in between the Spark pools in Synapse and the serverless pools in Synapse. If we want to save something as a Spark table, if it's a Parquet table, then we can go and query that through serverless SQL, which is great. Now, obviously, we're waiting to be able to do that with Delta. It'd be great if we could just run a little Spark thing, register all those tables automatically, and then be able to query it in our serverless nature, but we can't yet. So be aware, if you are registering a table, you're saving a table in the Spark side, and it's Delta format, that cannot be queried via serverless SQL yet. A little bit of a limitation. Not too bad, just be aware. Okay, and then started playing around with partitions. So just if you remember, this taxi partitions, we got this pickup date day, all these different days, and I want to be able to go, just give me that Parquet. Just give me that little subset. See, there's really not a lot of data in there. I don't want to be reading a few meg of data if I tell it to go and look at a certain partition. That's the aim. It shouldn't be reading all my hundreds of meg. It's still tiny amounts of data. But that's kind of what we're aiming for. Now, I had a bit of an issue here. So this is pointing at that taxi partitions. And I was trying to get it to do the same thing, so we can do the same count star, get it to go off. And again, that's reading the transaction log, happy, no difference to what we are doing earlier. But then I was like, well, actually, okay, I want to filter it on my pickup date day, I think it was. Just check the naming of there, pickup date day, just copy it in. And I was having to play with it, and it just wasn't performing that well. And nor this. There we go. Again, 21 seconds to go, and in that case, it's read everything. Weird. 16 meg. Shouldn't need to. We should just go to the transaction log for a count star. But just doing this. So where pickup date day. So I know that is partitioned, and I know the value is partitioned. So let's do this one. So 2019, 01, 21. Do that. Now I know it's going to think that it is a string, varchar. So we can do that. Just treat it as a string. Pickup date day equals my string. How many records do I have? None. Okay. Well, I know that's not true because I know I've got data in here. So I was digging into this a little bit, and if we go, let's just show me my pickup date day. So a little bit brute force, go and look at everything in my entire table. Now, realistically, that shouldn't take too long because it knows that is a partition column. So it should be able to go to this and go, well, I know pickup date day is a partition column. What are all the unique folder names I've got? And it goes and counts 365 columns, but it doesn't. It goes and actually kind of reads the data again and actually has to scan it, which is kind of annoying. And then if you see what it does with it, so because this is coming from a folder, it's not managed to parse it properly. So it looks like there's some slight weird inference. If it's pulling back values from a folder, it can get a little bit confused unless we're explicitly casting it to a certain thing. I could force it to cast it to an int, and I don't know what it would do with that. I mean, certainly I can just be lazy and go, well, I know it's going to be the first 8 characters. I mean, sure, that works, but it feels like there's still some gotchas in terms of how it's understanding things, how it's actually working with partition column names. So we're going to take that. Let's do that. Let's do account star again. So we're going to change this around. So we're no longer doing just that. We're now doing that trimmed one. So I want to be able to use the actual folder value that's coming from my Hive syntax style partitioning to do folder elimination, to do partition elimination. Only go and read the data in that folder. Tell me how many rows you've got. And that's good. In that case, it's actually gone and read the metadata. It's good. So if we say we force it to go and actually read the data, so let's do, again, a count distinct, or even just a distinct. I realize I'm being mean by just doing distincts. But, you know, it's a real world thing that we do quite a lot. So in taxes, what have I got? Grab a column name. Let's go with one I've not played with yet. Fair amount, sure. I want to just add it to my query. Okay, so if we go fair underscore amount, and then see how that goes. Now, again, it's going to have to read all the data to work out all the distinct values, but it should only have to read all the data in that column. So go random egg amount. Nice and quick. And if that's coming from cache, we can force it to a different thing. But that's not bad. Again, actually, yeah, to be fair, the amount of data in one of these folders is fairly tiny. So if it's only reading a particular column segment of all those tiny files, you're not going to see a lot of data. So again, that's really efficient. That's nice. So that at least is working. We're getting partition elimination. So if we, just to check, if we did that same thing without that partition filter, we should see it reading a lot more data because it's having to read that same column segment from all of the files across all of my subfolders. So partition elimination is working, which is great news. But it has some quirks, and it has a few things that you need to be careful about. It has a few schema inference things that you need to be aware of. But it's working. Now, my concern here is about getting into the deeper stuff. So when we've done optimizations and we've done Z ordering, so if we forced it to co-locate values with records with similar values into the same file so that we can use data skipping, how much is it going to do data skipping? So how much are we going to be able to get it to, rather than not doing partition elimination, we're doing file elimination based on the statistics that are in the Delta transaction log? It doesn't look like it's doing that yet. I've not had a deep look at it. And then the next level, so if we're using Delta, you've got these things called Bloom filter indexes, which is like a little side file that gives you an even better chance of doing data skipping. So you got partitioning, then you got Z ordering, then you got Bloom filter indexes, which is helping get closer and closer and closer to reading as little data as possible. And it doesn't look like some of those tweaks are in there yet. But again, this is preview. This is our first chance to read Delta in serverless SQL. So surprise, surprise, it doesn't do absolutely everything compared to the other more mature offerings of being able to read Delta. It's not as mature as Spark for doing it because Spark's been doing it for quite some time. Not a big surprise. So yeah, they're the experiments I've done so far. Certainly, it looks like views have a couple of gotchas, so be a little bit careful if you're trying to expose your Delta layer through views. There might be some performance tweaks. There might be some real noddy, obvious things that I've not done in my initial playing around. But I'm assuming if I've not done them in my initial playing around, then other people won't do them also in their initial playing around, unless they're smarter than me, like most people are. But it'll all be okay. So yeah. Little bit kind of like, one, super happy to see this. Super happy it's finally time that we can use Synapse Serverless SQL pools to serve out Delta. That is great, awesome, check that box. The open row set stuff, great, just seems to work. Schema inference, possibly a little bit pessimistic, but it's all okay, it does still work. Some gotchas, some things not quite there yet, but it's in preview. So hopefully these are things that we'll see getting fixed up. And when we get to the point when we can just, if we've got a Spark cluster turned on to do deeper analysis and deeper things, and then we can turn that off at like sort of quiet times when people don't need it. And if anyone needs to query the Delta in those quiet times, any ad hoc queries, they can just quickly hop on serverless, write some SQL, and go and munge inside those Delta tables. That just makes our lake so much more accessible, so much more able to be queried by things. We can query it through Management Studio, Azure Data Studio, Power BI can do direct queries against it. It just opens up the gates to so many more people to work in that single data lake. So generally, fantastic progress, really, really good move forwards. Just not quite there yet, but hopefully we'll get there soon. Alrighty, as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe if you didn't what I told you to at the start of the video. Otherwise, check out one of the videos, let us know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.